Hello students, I'm Himani Sharma, your UGC NET educator. In this new YouTube video, we are going to move forward with the concept series which are related to UGC NET Paper-II, specifically what subject area? English literature, right? So the poet that we are going to talk about in this concept series in this particular video is of a really important note. Her name is Kamala Das. So you would have heard her name, you would have read some poetry, other poets. Regardless of anything and everything, you would have read this very thing in your bachelor's, in your master's, etc. Correct? So let's just look at the image of Kamala Das and see. She was born in the year 1934 in Kerala. And she passed away in the year 2009, where? In Pune. So this was something which was factual. Now coming back again to what I was telling you all about, that she tried to write, she was a confessional poet. Now as the name also suggests one thing, that a confessional poet will be the one person who will be expressing what he or she feels regardless of anything. So she was one such poet who used to write poetry really boldly. She never ever shied away from anything, and that is one thing which made her different from other poets, because she was writing about her own experiences regardless of everything. And of course she was removing the gray area or line between her public and private life. So she was not maintaining any kind of, boundary between that and however her life has been, however, whatsoever experiences she has had, she was talking about those very things in her pieces of poetry. We are going to read certain other things as well as we move forward. Malayalam pen name was Madhavakutti. So Kamala Madhavakutti, because she was writing in 3 languages, right? And of course Malayalam was one of those. She was writing in English as well. And when she was writing in Malayalam, her pen name was Kamala Madhavakutti, and she converted in the year 1999 to Islam. She became a Muslim, and then when she became a Muslim, her name was also changed and it became Kamala Suraya. So if you see Kamala Suraya in your question paper, you need not worry, because you all know that it is Kamala Das only that the examiner is asking about. It's just that they wanted to make the question a little trickier for you all. Correct? She wrote openly and frankly about female sexual desire and the experience of being an Indian woman. As I already told you that she was a confessional poet, she never shied away from expressing how she felt. The eroticism, the passions that a woman also has, if we talk about the sexual desires, she was writing about those very things openly in her pieces of poetry without feeling any kind of barrier of the taboo. We consider these things as, in today's time as well, even if we say that India is developing, talking about these topics is something which is considered a taboo, that one should not be talking about a female's sexual desire, right? But she was boldly, bluntly bringing those very things in her poetry. So that was one thing which was making her different from other poets. She wrote things which centered on personal experiences, the marriage that she had, etc., right? Because she was the one person who got married at the age of 15. Correct? She won the Sahitya Akademi Award in 1985 for her poetry collection, Collected Poems. So this is one such thing which of course is important from net perspective, the awards which a writer wins. And Sahitya Akademi Award is one such award which is really important if you talk about the field of literature. So you all should be knowing this very thing as well. Bold expression of sensuality. We can see this very thing, breaking taboos surrounding female sexuality and talking about those very things in her poetry, bringing forward anything and everything which is there in her mind. Hence we are calling her a confessional poet. Raw and honest depiction of love, passion, intimacy, and the intricacy that comes with, binding these very themes together. She never ever, stops herself from talking about these very things. Contributions to the exploration of eroticism in Indian poetry. from a female perspective, if you see that you are talking about eroticism, if you are talking about writing erotica even, that will be considered as a sin basically, even if people are developed, their mindsets are developed, so-called developed if I say, right. So, if a woman is writing erotica, if a woman is writing certain themes which are erotic in nature, she will be considered of a bad character or characterless. So, of course, bringing those things forward and trying to make these very things normal was one such thing that she was trying to do with her poetry, her writings, her short stories, etc. She wanted to remove the conditioning that we all, human beings in India have had from centuries, that a woman is supposed to be the one who is living in her domestic sphere, who is, respecting her husband, being obedient to him and following whatever he says. So, she was trying to remove those very barriers which were there to, which were stopping her basically to express what she or other females were feeling at some point of time. Das's poetry collection include Summer in Calcutta 1965, The Descendant 1967, The Old Playhouse and Other Poems 1973, right. These are certain collections which are important from the examination point of view, which are having most of her poems. So, this is poetry. English language works included the novel Alphabet of Lust. So, you see even here, we know that what we are going to find here in her work, in her novel. So, this is novel. Short stories included A Doll for the Child Prostitute and Padmavati the Harlot, right. So, these are the short stories or the short story collections which were there. Correct. So, she was not just related to one genre, but she was exploring, she was writing in other genres and other languages as well, because she wanted to reach to the masses per se. Now, first of all, An Introduction, which is a poem written by her, published in the year 1965 in her first volume of poetry, Summer in Calcutta. Explores the theme of gender. She is going to talk about that, right? Identity and societal expectations. Now, when we are talking about certain poems, we need to keep this very thing in mind, that in what collection it is published. And Summer in Calcutta is her first poetry collection. So, you all should be knowing that yes, An Introduction, she is going to introduce herself as well, talking about that me being a poet, I am going to talk about or bring these things forward here. Expresses a poet's struggle to conform to the traditional roles and her desire for self-expression which is there. There have been certain things that yes, as I already was telling you, that if a woman is trying to write about erotica, she will not be, highly appreciated. So, she was talking about that how for certain roles, even if she is trying to write poetry, things are conformed, things are restricted for her as well. Critiques the limitations imposed on women, because she was a woman poet, she was confessing certain things and she was writing for the advocacy of, women, for freedom and individuality, that even if I am married to a person, there is something which is different. I am a person who is different from the other person, and the individuality should also be celebrated. It was advocated in her poetry, we can see that. So, we are going to read the poem, An Introduction. I don't know politics, but I know names of those in power and can repeat them like days of week or names of months, beginning with Nehru. I am Indian, very brown, born in Malabar. I speak 3 languages. Write in 2, dream in 1. So, you see how beautifully she is trying to talk about and introduce herself, that how am I going to talk about in my poetry. Don't write in English, they said. English is not your mother tongue. Why not leave me alone, critics, friends, visiting cousins, every one of you. She is asking them that do I not have my own individuality, that you are telling me what to do. You are telling me that I should not be expressing things in English. Why not? Why that should not be there? Why not let me speak in any language I like? The question that she raised, she is answering that very thing here as well. The language I speak becomes mine. Its distortions, its squareness, all mine, mine alone, and you are no one to tell me that yes, this is a language that you should be writing in, but rather it is my individual choice which should play an important role. So this is what she is talking about in the poem in introduction. Then we have The Old Playhouse and Other Poems, which is also a poem, and it is published in the collection The Old Playhouse and Other Poems in 1973. We already have seen that in the previous slides as well. Examines the complexities of love. So love is a prominent theme in Kamala Das's poetry, and the passion, the individuality, those very things are also which are coming there. Desire and marital expectations, that this is what is expected of a woman, or this is what basically is expected out of a marriage, that how it should be working. Critiques the patriarchal nature of relationships, that yes, आपको पतिव्रता बनना है, you are supposed to be like that, you are supposed to worship your husband. So she asks those very questions, that why is it not vice versa as well, why is there no equality there, and the loss of self within suffocating marriage. So if you are there in a suffocating marriage, how with the responsibilities that come, you are there of course, but you lose your own self. She tries to talk about that as well. Depicts the deterioration of love and longing for freedom and individuality. So the theme of individuality, the freedom that a woman should be having, that is also one thing which is seen in The Old Playhouse as well. So we are going to read it. You planned to tame, let me just first of all increase the size of this very poetry a little bit for you all. Yeah. You planned to tame a swallow, to hold her in the long summer of your love, so that she would forget not the rose seasons alone and the homes left behind. That a woman now, she is married, she should be the one who has left her home, and she should be the one who will be forgetting it as well. This is how you are trying to tame her. But also her nature, you are trying to talk about her nature, you are trying to take a hold of it as well. The urge to fly and the endless pathways of the sky, you are trying to maintain all those very things which are there, but you are trying to deteriorate them, right? And she is losing her own self there. It was not to gather knowledge of yet another man that I came to you, but to learn what I was. And by learning, to learn to grow, but every lesson you gave was about yourself, and what about my individuality which is lost, about just learning about you and not my own self. You were pleased with my body's response, with the sexual desires that you had, right? Its weather, its usual, shallow convulsions. You dribbled spittle into my mouth. You poured yourself into every nook and cranny. You embalmed my poor lust with your bittersweet juices. So this is what she is talking about, the suffocating marriage, where we can also see that the consent is not playing an important role, which is there when you are being with someone, even in a marriage or in a relationship, right? You called me wife. I was taught to break saccharine into your tea and to offer the right moment the vitamins. Cowering beneath your monstrous ego, because the patriarchal society is deciding the relationships that we have. So the monstrous ego that you have, I ate the magic loaf and became a dwarf, right? I lost my will and reason. I lost my own self. To all your questions, I mumbled incoherent replies. I did not even know that what I was talking about to you. The summer begins to pall. I remember the rudder breezes of the fall and the smoke from the burning leaves which are there. So this is an image that she is using. Your room is always lit by artificial lights which are there. Your windows always shut. Even the air conditioner helps so little, all pervasive is the male scent of your breath. That how you are so full of your own self that you are not even letting the nature reach you. The cut flowers in the vases have begun to smell of human sweat. That it is also you only who is there. There is no more singing, no more dance. My mind is an old playhouse. Here is the reference to the title. My mind is an old playhouse with all its lights put out. कि उसकी सारी जो है लाइटें बंद कर दी गई हैं. The strong man's technique is always the same. He serves his love in lethal doses, dangerous, which are dangerous to your own self. Lethal means that. For love is Narcissus or at the water's edges, haunted by its own lonely face, and yet It must seek at last an end, a pure, total freedom. It must will the mirrors to shatter and the kind night to erase the water. So here she is talking about the freedom that a woman should be having, right? So this is the poetry, this is the poem, The Old Playhouse by Kamala Das, which we tried to read and see how the patriarchy is one thing which is always and always trying to be the deciding factor of how a woman should be treating her husband, how she should be at her, patriarchal, at her house. Then we have The Dance of the Eunuchs, published in the year 1965 in her first volume of poems, which appeared under the title Summer in Calcutta. So, of course, The Dance of the Eunuchs have also been published in the same collection. Reflects on the marginalized lives of the eunuchs who are there, correct? Themes of identity, because identity crises are mostly seen in the people who are marginalized, on the groups who are marginalized. Gender and societal norms as to how do they look on the eunuchs, what kind of perception or opinions do they have. Highlights the eunuchs' struggle for acceptance, how they should also be accepted in the society, and the pain of the societal rejection that they are not. They are still treated as if they are outcasted rather than they should be accepted, because what are they? They are also human beings only, correct? But the society does not let them normalize those very things. So the struggle that the struggle that the eunuchs usually face between a society's rejection and how they just want to get accepted by the society, that conflict has been talked about in the poem The Dance of the Eunuchs. So we are going to read it. It was hot, so hot before the eunuchs came to dance. White skirts going round and round, cymbals richly clashing. At anklets, jingling, jingling, jingling. Beneath the fiery gulmohar with long braids, flying dark eyes, flashing. They danced and they danced. Oh, they danced till they bled. They were green tattoos on their cheeks, jasmine in their hair. Some were dark, some were almost fair. Their voices were harsh, their songs melancholy. They sang of lovers dying and or children left unborn. Some beat their drums, other beat their sorry breasts, and wailed and writhed in vacant ecstasy. Ecstasy means so much happiness. They were thin in limbs and dry. Their half-burnt logs were from funeral pyres. A drought and a rottenness were in each of them. Even the crows were so silent on trees, and the children wide-eyed, which is also telling us that how, even if they were trying to get accepted by the human beings, the children who are so unaware of them, right, the crows, the animals, the birds, etc., they are also not trying to accept them. Correct? Still, all were watching these poor creatures' convulsions. The sky crackled then. Thunder came and lightning and rain, a meagre rain that smelt of dust in attics and the urine of lizards and mice. Right? This is the Dance of Eunuchs, which is published in Summer in Calcutta, which was a debut collection of Kamala Das. So you see the conflict that we were talking about, that was there. Then we have My Grandmother's House, a really important piece of poetry which has been there, I think, in the 11th or 12th class of CBSE, correct? Published in 1965 collection again in Summer in Calcutta. Nostalgically recalls the poet's childhood memories in her grandmother's house and how she is seeing that she is growing old. Evokes a sense of love for her, a sense of security and simplicity which is associated with the past. Hence, we are talking about the nostalgia that comes along with her visiting her grandmother's house. Explores the contrast between the poet's present reality, how she is, what equation does she really share with her grandmother, and the cherished memories of the past, that when she used to come at that point of time when she was a child, how things were then and how things are now. So the contrast of the past with now. So there is a parallel which is drawn between the two. So we are going to read it. There's a house now far away where once I received love. That woman died. The house withdrew into silence. Snakes moved among books. I was then too young to read, and my blood turned cold like the moon. How often I think of going there to peer through blind eyes of windows or just listen to the frozen air. Or in wild despair, pick an armful of darkness to bring it here to lie. Lie behind my bedroom like a brooding dog. You cannot believe, darling, can you, that I lived in such a house and was proud and loved. I, who have lost my way and beg now at strangers' doors to receive love, at least in a small change. She is telling us that how by her grandmother she was receiving so much so much of love at that point of time when she was there. And after she is gone, she tries to peek through the doors. She wants to go there, bring certain kind of darkness, which means she wants to bring some memories with her of her grandmother to her own house so that they can live with her, right? And now she is craving that love that she once had when her grandmother was alive. So this is really, really heart-touching poetry of hers which is there. Then we have, what was Kamala Das's first book of poetry called? And I hope I have answered this very question multiple times in this very video. So try to answer it really quickly. The answer to this very question is option A. And the last question which I have for you all is, before even asking the question, I want you all to know this very thing, that Kamala Das wrote her autobiography in the year 1976. And the title of that autobiography was My Story. Correct, which is important from net perspective, of course. Another thing is that there was one collection. This is a question for you all, which you can write down in the comment section below, and after certain days, the answer will be pinned. So you can recheck it there. So one thing that I want to ask you right now as the question is that the last short story collection which was published posthumously, you are supposed to provide me with the name of Kamala Das's last short story collection which was published posthumously. Posthumously means after she passed away in the year 2009. What was the name of the short story collection? That is a question. Until then, you all keep on studying. I'll see you again in another video with the concept series that we have. Thank you so much and have a good day.